So, in the future, it is my opinion, after I would like to hear yours, the effects will be more powerful because we will use more devices. The use of these devices will be more widespread. They will be used in more places, even in the nature. Their use will grow not only at home, because we will buy more and more devices. Our everyday habits will change. They will be digitized. Because of this, the amount of circulating data will grow to be able to communicate with all devices. And even though I do not buy a phone or I do not buy a device for myself, the exponential growth of technology on the planet will affect me.
Yes, not only the number of phones and devices will change, but also their increased capacity of emitting radiation. So each of these areas will grow at the same time. It is obvious. There are people who say that I don't use smartphones, I don't use internet on my phone, but it is impossible to stay outside of this space because I live in it. If I say that I will use only cable internet and not a router in my flat, what will I solve with that? Almost nothing, because my neighbors, the one who lives above and the one below, use highly radiative routers. So I don't achieve my goal and I cannot put my head in the sand because I cannot avoid this phenomena. We have to defend against this altogether, or we stop using phones. And I don't mean by these that use analog phones instead of smartphones, because analog phones radiate the same way like smartphones. Maybe it is even worse because they receive the signal by a tiny antenna, so it can be even more harmful than a smartphone where the signal is received by a bigger surface or a receiver unit. So I cannot avoid it. So we definitely have to find a solution.
Where are these radiations present at the most? What do you suggest?
It is important to know that this sector is very new. It started to attract more interest on the federal level, perhaps around 2000, when they started to regulate it and new laws were made. Before that, it was unknown. I mean, it was not studied. We didn't study about it in universities, high schools, or elementary schools, basically nowhere. This is the reason why there is not many complex professional groups or research groups which has solid 10 years of experience in the field. We are trying to find these groups in Canada, Magda Havas, engineer groups in Slovenia. Also, we went to Stuttgart, Germany, to participate in meetings within the sector to find out how do radiations affect the health of the people. Do we really need to defend against it or not? It was before any directive was made. It is obvious in professional circles now, just as in southern, as in northern Europe as well. Also, I would like to note that this sector differs a lot from any other sector in the world because only a really small group of people deal with this subject. Of course, there are extreme groups, fearmongers and fake news spreaders, but the number of real professionals who deal with this technology is really small.
So, let's go back a bit and list a few areas. What does the radiation affect? On the one hand, it affects our body, our fitness level, and our health. Apart from these, what other areas does it affect?
Let's not miss the point that we shouldn't see only the negative side of electromagnetic radiation. It has positive applications as well. For example, in the healthcare system, without the introduction of electromagnetic radiations, bioresonance therapy, therapeutic treatments, CT, MRI, etc., the science would be much slower. So it has a positive side as well. And we know well the negative effects. For example, we cannot use X-ray every month. We cannot use MRI often because it exposes our body to a heavy load and it can be harmful. I could tell the same about our living space. Well, of course, I cannot compare them directly because our flat cannot be exposed to the same load as an X-ray or MRI can cause. Although there are cases where the dental offices are in community places. Sometimes they are in apartment buildings where the dental office radiates to the neighbors through the walls. We have to take care of this as well. So for now, we cannot create the same radiation environment at home, but we are getting closer to it. In this tendency of growth of IT, robotics, and other technologies, our homes will be soon charged with high doses of radiations, and if we are not allow us to live a healthy life, soon we will have to put a sign on our door where we say keep out because of the harmful effects. We don't want to get to this point, but the trend goes this way. I still remember the results of when I measured the electromagnetic radiation in my flat 20 years ago, or even more than 20 years ago. The scale of radiation is much greater now. Everything affects us, outside effects and inside effects too. All of this in the same building as before.
Shall we pay attention to the design of our homes?
Nowadays, the architects and the constructors don't pay attention to these details. They design my flat in a way that the electrical room, the mechanical room, or the water circulating system is right under or next to my room. So the flat has to be designed in a way that these risk factors are placed far away from my living space. It doesn't happen today. And there are many examples of people having to sell their new houses because its design makes it impossible to live there. So when the design is ready, the constructor comes and he builds very poorly the electrical system and the heating system. Many problems like contact protection deficiencies, electrical deficiencies, etc. will accumulate and appear in my living space at the same time. And then comes the interior designer, or I am the interior designer, and I will say that I will put there my bed, there will be the kitchen, and there will be the living room, and I will design or build in a way again that it doesn't meet the requirements. The logic of designing and building my house in a good way is highly important. There is a possibility to defend later against the radiations and the negative effects, but it will be much more expensive than if I would design and build my house in the correct and appropriate way against radiations.
Can we do something against EMF radiation?
We can plan our life, of course, we can think of it, but we cannot defend against the effects always, because many times it doesn't depend on us. Of course, there's a difference when we talk about medical treatments where I have the right to choose to take the medicine or not to take it. But the radiation is something I cannot control, although there are options to defend against it.